It's so wonderful to see a strong woman in a leadership position. I just love it.
Well, thank you very much. The feeling is mutual. Hello, everyone. My guest on the Leadership Loop podcast is someone I first learned about last year when she was on the Today Show. After I heard her story, I was inspired by her and actually reached out to her on Twitter, followed her on Twitter, and then reached out to her on Twitter. And I'm very excited that the connection proved fruitful because we're here today talking. Sherri is recognized as an expert in cybersecurity and data breach response and was called a, quote, security badass, end quote, by the New York Times. She authored a recently released book, Data Breaches, and her professional experiences are featured in the book, Breaking and Entering, the extraordinary story of a hacker called Alien. Sherri is a GIAC certified forensic examiner and penetration tester. She received her degree in computer science and electrical engineering from MIT. Thanks for taking time from hacking and working to make the world a better place and joining us today. So Sherri, I am delighted to have you on and delighted to have you visiting with the President's Leadership class. So let me start by asking you, how did you end up at MIT?
How did I end up at MIT? That's actually a funny question because I wasn't like a math and science geek, but I had some really important mentors when I was in high school. Like my English teacher was just really important to me. My father really pushed me to go to college and pushed me to apply, which I don't think I would have done without him. And so just by happenstance, I got in there. And once I got in, I was like, okay, well, I guess I better go. And we made it work.
So some of the students that are in the President's Leadership class are in the process of discovery. We have freshmen and we have seniors. And remember, freshmen haven't been on a campus either in high school or here at the university necessarily since March when COVID started. So Sherri, were you one of those students that arrived at MIT and you knew exactly what you wanted to do from the first day and went straight through and graduated in 4 years?
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And I definitely did not know what I wanted to do then. I definitely struggled, honestly, along the way. And I think while the classes I took were important, it was really the life skills that I learned and the relationships that I built while I was there that were the seeds of what turned into a career. And, you know, building those relationships will create a tapestry for you that will just become the foundation of your career. And don't get discouraged. Don't think you need to have it planned out. If I had tried planning it out, I wouldn't be a cybersecurity professional because this industry did not even exist when I started. So sometimes I think you kind of got to go with the flow and just see what opportunities open up for you and don't be afraid to step through those doors.
Now, MIT is a large campus. It's right in the heart of a suburban metropolitan area. Was it daunting when you arrived there as a freshman or did you feel ready to go?
I think I didn't really understand the full significance of the institution until long after I graduated. For me and my friends, it was like our living room. You know, we would walk down the hallways late at night in our pajamas and peek through the windows of all the big laboratories and play with the equipment that they had left out for people to take for free. It was really, in retrospect, an amazing experience. And I think I didn't know enough to be daunted at the time.
Did you live on campus?
I lived on campus for part of it. I had a very complicated college experience. I did not complete in 4 years. I took some time away, I had to come back. And so for part of it, I lived on campus. For part of it, I lived off campus. I think there's pros and cons. A lot of what I enjoyed living on campus was that we just took over the buildings. Like we literally would like climb through the old elevator shafts that were discontinued and we would find all these interstitial spaces. So that's what hacking was to me then. We would say we were going hacking and we would do it like Saturday night.
That's pretty funny. When I saw that on the Today Show, I thought this woman has got guts. So how did that start to manifest itself into a career? I mean, hacking and sleuthing buildings, that is.
It's funny how it all came together. I didn't realize it, but my extracurricular activities were the main things that prepared me for what eventually would come my career. And at MIT, they joked all the different majors have numbers. So like you could be course 6, which is what I ended up graduating in. That's computer science. We would joke that course 19, that's a number that didn't exist, was hacking. So you would physically break into places. We would learn how to open doors, things like that. It was all for fun. And then later, when I became a physical penetration tester, I leveraged many of those skills professionally to break into banks. And as soon as you start doing that, once you're a professional, the rules of the game change. You can't play around anymore once you become a professional.
Mm-hmm. Were you in clubs? You said something about extracurricular. What kind of clubs or activities were you in, and how did you find them? And did an advisor point you that way, or did you see them at one of the, these outdoor fairs that we do? Well, we used to do pre-COVID. Do to invite students to join and engage? How'd you come around in those extracurricular?
Well, a lot of times I would just do what my friends were doing. So, if my friends were involved in the yearbook, I got involved in the yearbook, and I ended up becoming the literary editor of the yearbook because I like to write. And I think that's really important to have that social time and to get introduced to things. And again, the things your friends introduce you to could end up becoming your career.
That is so true. When you were in college, did you do any study away or study abroad, or did you pretty much stay there?
Well, I hit a point. I was originally an aerospace engineering major for 3 years, actually. And it was very stressful. It just wasn't the right fit for me. And I couldn't understand why. And I was feeling sad and depressed, like I know a lot of people do. And I was about to withdraw. I remember walking to the dean's office and picking up the withdrawal slip. And then I was like, I don't want to let my family down. I don't want to let my parents down. Maybe there's a way I can earn credits and just take a break, like hit the reset button. And so instead I picked up a study abroad form and I applied to Trinity College in Dublin, and I studied drama, and I got all my humanities credits, and I worked as a barmaid, and it was exactly the change of pace that I needed. And when I came back, I realized that aerospace engineering was not what I wanted to do. I had a clear understanding of my path forward. And sometimes you just got to hit that reset button and experience something new in order to understand where you really want to go.
That is such a fabulous story. And were you on scholarships? Were you applying for scholarships and financial aid and other things like that to help you think through these? Or did you find that finances to be a barrier?
I mean, finances are always challenging. My parents are both small business owners, and I was fortunate that they've always been extremely supportive of education. My family immigrated from Russia. I'm a 4th generation, but I grew up working in the same store that my great-grandfather started. So we have this really strong family connection, and education was like the most important thing. So I worked with my parents, and they made me a deal. They said that they would help me with my college education if I promised that I would help my kids with their college education. So I've already started saving up, and I intend to make good on my promise.
What a great story. A lot of our students come from long lines of family connections, and in many cases also first generation students, first generation college students. And so we sometimes put obstacles and barriers in front of ourselves, kind of like what you were talking about just a moment ago. Did you ever face any barriers or obstacles as a woman? As a woman at MIT, or a woman studying engineering or computer science?
Oh, I think everybody who's a woman or a minority in a technical field is going to face barriers. Some of them were really obvious ones, like unwanted attention. And I just, if it's little stuff, I would just not let it distract me. Bigger stuff, you can't be afraid to ask for help. You sometimes need to do that. But I think the hardest thing was that people would have the assumption that you didn't know anything or you knew less. And the hardest part about that is that sometimes it was true. Especially in aerospace engineering, there were maybe 10% of our class was women, maybe. And many of the men in the class, not all of them, but many of them had been building airplanes with their dads since they were little boys. And for us women, we didn't have that early childhood experience. So there was a grain of truth in their assumptions. And that just really inspired us to work all the harder and to really tackle that challenge. One guy said to me at one point, "You're never going to be as good as me because I just have a head start. I've been doing this for years." And I was like, first it made me mad. And then I was like, I'm not going to let it suck my energy. I don't need to even try to be better than him. I'm going to be the best that I can be and work really hard and figure out what path life has for me.
And you've done it, obviously. I want to come back to something you said a moment ago. So I'm going to refer to, we were cyber stalking you too. I was joking with some of our staff that I had been listening to you over the last year, because originally we were going to have you come out last year before the world erupted. And I was joking with somebody in our IT department. I think Sherri Davidoff has me on like the cybersecurity watch list because I've been cyber stalking her. So let me tell you, when you were interviewed on the Smart People podcast, you spoke about some of the hacking you took part in as a student at MIT, which you just mentioned a moment ago. It's not the kind we typically think about in terms of computer systems, but rather it was physical hacking. So tell us, how did all of that come to be, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, the word hacking doesn't come from computers. So when I was a freshman in college, the hacking meant we would meet up and go climb around buildings or break into places, not with any malicious intent. And there was sort of an acceptance at MIT that that was part of the culture. I do not recommend you do this someplace where it's not part of the culture, by the way. Or you could pull a hack. That meant you could do something silly like turn a building into a game of Tetris by changing all the lights in the rooms and programming them, things like that. So you could pull a hack, you could go hacking. And I think the overarching idea is thinking outside the box and not being afraid to experiment and taking these risks in a calculated way. And so gradually over time, that became used in the computer sense as well. And many of the same concepts apply.
How did you build your confidence really to sort of pursue these out of the box thinking, particularly when you changed your major to computer science? Did you imagine, well, this career didn't even exist then. What did you imagine when you thought, let me try computer science?
It just seemed like a way that I could graduate. That I had. And as soon as I started it though, I was like, I'm in the right place. Like I have a very logical mind. It was just a good fit. But I think it's important not to be afraid of failure. I want to share with your audience that I fail all the time. I have failed today. I have failed this week. I have failed at big things. I fail at little things. I think I drive our team crazy because we're always trying new stuff and often biting off more than we can chew. And for every time you succeed, there's going to be possibly a zillion failures. That's actually part of hacking. If I'm breaking into a website, I'm literally going to try hundreds, if not thousands of things that fail before I find the one thing that succeeds. And I'd love to share a story with you actually about failure, success after failure. When I started my own business, the first gigs that I started getting were these social engineering engagements where my job was to try to break into a bank using phishing emails or phone calls. And this was, gosh, I think 11 or 12 years ago. So before it became a really common thing to do. And I was like, okay, well, how do I get these bank employees to click on my link? And then I have to call them. I got to call them and like get information out of them or like their password or things like that. So the first, I would write a script, and the first ones I wrote I would offer them like a free gas card, like money to click on this link. And that was kind of a dud. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to do a gift card for clothes. Everybody, you can get these free clothes if you click on that link. And that was like also honestly a dud. And then one day I saw an advertisement for an iPod and I was like, okay, click on this link for a survey and you'll get a free iPod. And all the bank employees clicked on the link. And I was like, my goodness. And then the next like 20 banks I did the iPod thing and it worked every time. And then once that started petering off because iPods got a little less popular, I used the iPad. And then I started looking at what is the popular tech thing of the day. And so you learn, and you have to try and experiment. And then once you figure out what works, you can kind of analyze it and do it better and better.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So that really probably helped you grow your business as well. You said you started off as gigging, basically, although I don't know that they used that word back then, or did they?
Yeah, no, I don't think they did. Yeah, I started off just subcontracting just through people I knew. Someone I was going to be, I reached a point of burnout, and I was like,
Mm.
I'm not going to do security anymore. I'm going to be a barmaid, a bartender, and I got my bartender's certificate. And then I got a phone call from an old colleague, and he said, "Hey, I have this project. I really need someone on it right away." And I was like, "Oh, I'm supposed to have my first interview for a bartending gig." And then he told me how much it paid, and I was like, okay, it's way
I'm
more than I would
there.
make bartending. So let's do this.
So you started off as an employee, a subcontractor. Did you move into an employee before you branched out and formed your own company?
No, I didn't. I was subcontracting for quite a while and using subcontracting to build my business and to grow it. And I didn't have any intent to like create a real business, I guess. But then I got pregnant and I had all this work to do. And I realized as my due date came up that there was no way I was going to be able to like make sales calls or make calls to my client while I was like breastfeeding and nursing a kid. I was going to have to be able to have flexible hours. And so I needed somebody else in the office to handle those calls with the client. And so that's how I ended up hiring my first employee. It was kind of like either you press the accelerator or you're going to have to stop and give up. And I was like, all right, I guess we're going to press the accelerator.
Now, on the Today Show, you were interviewed in Montana. Is that where you're from?
I'm not from Montana. I'm here right now. I grew up in New Jersey, in a town where it was a commuter town to New York. So a lot of people commuted to New York.
So how did you end up in Montana? Were you CEO? Walk me through this time frame. So you're gigging, you've got subcontracts, and you're building your client base. Now you're the CEO of a company. What happened in between there, and how'd you get to Montana?
Yeah, I didn't actually give myself the title of CEO until maybe 5 years ago. I kind of didn't believe in titles. I just called myself manager. But at a certain point, when your company grows enough, people do expect you to have a title like CEO. Yeah, so I was working and growing my business in Boston. And one day a bank got hacked and I was pulled onto the case. And a number of other people were also pulled on the case. It lasted for weeks. It was actually a really cool case. We flew to like Europe. We had to collect evidence in New York. We were sneaking around office buildings late at night. And in that process, I met a fellow consultant, got to know him, fell in love, moved to Montana, where he was from. And here I am today. So I'm not going to say I'm thankful that the bank got hacked, but I am thankful that I had that opportunity.
What's life like in Montana now?
Life is different, but it's beautiful here. We really have a lot of emphasis on the outdoors and nature.
Mm-hmm.
It is getting cold. We had a big snowstorm, and so my kids are literally like building snowmen in October, which still takes some getting used to. But having grown up in New Jersey, I don't think I'll ever take the mountains for granted. I remember the first time I drove west, I drove through Texas, and we reached a point where I stopped and I got out of the car and I was like, I did not know that this much open space existed. It was so amazing and such a huge relief. And so, yeah, I'm never going to take the landscape for granted out west. That's for sure.
So what role have mentors played in your life, either as a college student or as a business owner? And how do you find a mentor? I'm sure you probably mentor yourself, but how did you find mentorship helpful in your progression?
I'm so glad you asked this question because it really made me stop and think. I've been lucky to have a lot of amazing mentors. And again, one of my most important mentors has been my father. And especially once I started a business, because he has always managed his own business. He put himself through college, by the way. So he had to juggle that himself. And he's always, even when I'm having a tough time, I know I have someone to go to. I also, one of my best friends, she is a working professional as well. She juggles kids and she's a therapist. So she essentially has her own business. And she's a little older than me. So it's really helpful to just recognize, like, people won't stop and say, I will be your mentor. And, you may be able to ask and say, will you be my mentor? But sometimes it's just a matter of keeping your eyes open and recognizing when someone is responsive to you, when someone is volunteering their time, or when you feel like it's okay to call them about a problem and they're going to give you advice. And that builds those bonds and builds strength. And then sometimes you can also help them. Mentorship doesn't always go one way,
So Sherri, we're all sort of trying to adjust to this pre-COVID, COVID post-COVID life. How have you been thinking about COVID, and how do you think we ought to think about this for college students, both current college students who are in college, but how do we think about professions and industries post-pandemic? How have you been wrestling with this in your own mind? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that every crisis is an opportunity. And as much as it hurts to have to change our way of life, it's hard for those of us that are caregivers to have less support. Right now I'm trying to figure out, how do I juggle 2 kids and no school? And, I'm fortunate that I have great health, but not as much of a safety net as I would like. So that, I think, is a challenge for many of us. But at the same time, there are these incredible opportunities. Like Cynthia, I can't tell you how excited I am that you and I get to talk today.
Yes.
And yeah, and we get to do this because COVID has changed the way we communicate, and it's allowed us to accept virtual meetings and these virtual experiences. And that is so important. And I think we should look at the things that are new opportunities that COVID is bringing to us, and thinking about, do we want to retain these after COVID is done? What have we learned and what can we take away? For working women or working people that are also caregivers, these new opportunities are huge. So I've turned 3 rooms in my office into studios, and I have been doing more talks than I ever have before because I don't have to get on airplanes. I used to have to turn down gigs all the time. There's that word again, gigs. I used to have to turn them down all the time because I couldn't leave my kids. They just need their mommy. And now I can speak with you. I can be part of your community, and I can do talks for big international companies that would never have let me do them virtually before. So I hope we think about that, because it's giving a lot of people new opportunities.
So we're all learning new digital skills, upskilling, right? That's another new word. We're all upskilling these days. How do you think your industry, or computer science and cybersecurity, is going to change? Are you seeing this huge uptick in hacking and threats and whatever the new words are that describe some of what we're experiencing in our economy and communities today?
Absolutely. There is an increase in hacking activity from what we've seen. A lot of organizations rushed to the cloud or have been allowing people to work from home that have never done that before. And so there's a lot of new vulnerabilities that we're probably going to see manifest over the next couple of years. So that's going to be a challenge for all of us. Remember, though, the cyber criminals are in the same boat. One of the ransomware gangs that we work with, I guess, we do a lot of ransom negotiations at LMG. So if a company gets hacked and they're held for ransom, we will help to negotiate that and get your data released. And one of the criminal groups, Maze, actually put a note up on their website saying, our communications may be delayed. COVID is affecting us the way it's affecting the rest of you. So, it is important to keep in mind that it cuts both ways, that it's affecting all of us. And the other thing about COVID is that in cybersecurity, there has been a big imbalance with respect to the gender gap. So there have always been far more men than women. And there's a lot of talk about getting more women into it. But the big barrier is that I can't go to a conference just for fun. I'm one of those women that I can't leave my kids for 5 days, especially if I'm not getting paid. I couldn't cover the cost of childcare. And so there's that invisible barrier for caregivers that has suddenly been lifted because many of these conferences are now virtual, and that's huge. So my hope is that we will see real change now. We will actually see more women and more caregivers being able to participate in this industry and not hit that ceiling.
Do you think, have you seen or have you heard, for college students that are now stuck at home, their roommates might be their parents, their bedroom has become the home office, and their study room and their game room and everything else. What kind of opportunities exist for entrepreneurship? I know you mentioned there's always opportunities. How should students be thinking about entrepreneurship now?
Yeah, don't be afraid to experiment. And remember that we're all apart together. And while you're stuck at home, that brings new opportunities. For example, you know, I'm looking at the bars and restaurants here in Missoula, and it's a challenge. My mom's store was a restaurant supply store, so we've always been really in touch with that industry. And I'm seeing how some people are experimenting with kits, and you can do stuff like that. You know, make a kit, send it out once a month. There's definitely ways where you can start businesses right now. And in some ways you have a leg up because you don't have expectations. You're starting from the ground up. And so you can craft a business model from scratch that actually fits with this new world we're in.
That's great advice and a great way to end. Unfortunately, we're about out of time, but I understand you're providing some written responses to some of the questions that came in from students that I didn't have time to ask. So we're going to be posting those on the A&M San Antonio PLC website. And the other thing we'll do, Sherri, is myself and other staff members, we will connect with the students about your talk, what they learned today, some of the themes that you shared, and how they react and build on this for their learning. So your talk today is really exponential, not only in helping the PLC, but other students, because we're also going to share this with women in IT. One of our faculty members who is in our computer science program has an NSF grant where she works with women across several counties from many universities. And we'll be sharing that with them, sharing this with them as well. So they'll have the prompt to be inspired by some of the thoughts that you've shared with us today. So any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our students?
I just want to thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really a pleasure to be able to participate in your community. And yeah, I hope you continue this series. Thanks so much, Cynthia.